Hello everyone, SirMonkeySuit Dabi here, back again with My Hero Academia Season 5. We are on Episode 2, and to a lot of people, that will mean that it is truly Episode 1, because, of course, you know, My Hero, throughout the seasons, have, you know, their Episode 1 has generally been a recap. Now, I will say that actually the first episode of this season was probably the best one that they've done in terms of, like, you know, recapping certain events of what is, you know, transpired, while introducing, you know, all of the characters, all of them in Class 1A, and putting them in this, like, sort of hypothetical villain situation that's turned up. I thought it was really cool. Everyone got to showcase their sort of talents and what their kind of roles were, which I really liked. But, you know, not only that, we also got a little bit at the end of the episode, which was a nice little sort of teaser, I guess, for what we're going to be seeing, hopefully in this episode, which obviously has to do with Endeavour, Hawks, and Dabi. So, I can't remember your name, sorry. Someone did actually comment on my, you know, thoughts about Dabi showing up at the end there, and saying, you know, this is the first time we've met, right, Endeavour? Something I didn't actually talk about was, yeah, that intonation is, you know, this is the first time we've met, right, Endeavour? It's that whole thing of, like, you know, he's playing with these words. Obviously, they've met before. And, of course, we all know about this whole thing of Dabi possibly being a Todoroki and that third sibling that we've never seen since those, like, little flashbacks where there was that one kid with Endeavour's coloured hair. We've never, you know, we haven't seen whoever that kid is, and it makes sense that this would be where we're going with this, you know, and, you know, the fact that Dabi actually sought out Hawks and whatever's going on there, you know, I've laid out all my thoughts on it in the post-discussion for last episode, so I'm not going to go all into it now. But essentially, my thoughts are that I don't think Hawks is truly, like, you know, a bad person that's colluding with, you know, the League of Villains or anything like that. I feel like Dabi went out his way, and this is like his own little thing that he's doing away from the League of Villains, to get back at his father in some capacity. And because Hawks, you know, has been inspired by Endeavour, I think that, you know, whatever it is that they were colluding in terms of, you know, like, if this whole thing was a plan so that Endeavour would show the world, you know, that, you know, he could take the title of #1 and everything like that, and get people on board with. I don't know what's in it for Dabi, if that is the case, but maybe that is more of the reason why Hawks was involved in it to begin with. But, you know, that's just completely, you know, like a theory that I'm chucking out there because we don't have all of the information. I hope we get it in this episode. So yeah, we are going to get an episode 2 now. So as always, the reaction will be here on YouTube, but if for whatever reason in the future it gets taken down for copyright, I will re-upload this as a discussion only, and the link to the reaction will be in the description below. As always, the link to the full-length reaction to this episode is in the description below as well. So if you do want to watch my full reaction and not just the cut 10-minute version, then the offer is there for you. But yes, nothing else really to talk about, so we're going to get in episode 2 of Season 5, see what we get. So without further ado, let's go.
Well, I wasn't expecting to find you here.
Dabi.
You can't fight like this. Just recover your strength.
Gonna kick off. Hawks is gonna fight him.
Small feathers left, but I should be able to buy us some time.
I mean, no way I could win this fight, right?
Unless the top 2 heroes were bloodied and beaten already.
Oh, fucking hell. Oh, shit! Fuck! What's her name? What's her name?
Things were just getting good. Do it, Uchiko. See you later, #1. Try not to disappoint. And don't you dare get killed, Enji Todoroki!
Look where your friends are!
Oh, Mirko, that's who it is.
This is just the beginning.
That wasn't how you said things would play out. The fight was supposed to go down at a warehouse tomorrow. Instead, you unleashed a Nomu in the middle of the city. If we're going to trust each other, you have to keep me up to date.
I guess I
What
had
is
some
going
change
on?
of heart. You said you'd bring a random pro along. I didn't expect a #1 hero.
I did what you asked of me. You're the only one who broke a promise here.
Think of it as me testing our pet pro to see if I can actually trust his word. You came to us saying you sympathize with our cause, yet you fought so hard today.
I'm no good to you if the hero community loses its faith in my work.
This is crazy.
Infiltrate the League of Villains.
You're gonna have to explain, because that sounds crazy.
Right.
Are you forming a
Okay.
search team to find them?
To truly stamp out these dark organizations, we need more information, especially about that bioengineered human.
So you want me to get close to them, but expect me to sit back and ignore all the harm they cause?
We're asking you because we think you're someone who can ignore it. You're indifferent to prestige and fame. We think there's no one more.
Yeah, so he's
suitable
the
than
perfect candidate for it then.
You ever thought about the families of those you murdered in cold blood?
I
Fuck.
thought about it so much, it's driven me insane.
Seems to be getting
Bonus, your left eye's
agitated.
still working, which is honestly surprising. This
Damn.
is all my fault.
Don't flatter yourself. My injuries are my own responsibility.
That's a hell of a
Oh,
scar.
man. I was
Right.
thinking, it's possible that the Noma rumors themselves are being used as bait to catch heroes.
You should be more careful. If you plan to keep investigating this, you're going to need someone to back you up.
Aw, and you care about me so much you'll be my bodyguard. That's so nice.
I'll incinerate you.
And what about you, huh? Taking some R&R, big guy?
Possibly.
Okay, catch you later then. Is this absolutely necessary?
This is a proposition.
You're calling it a proposition even though you know I can't possibly refuse you.
A kid? You mean a child saved everyone? That accident was terrible. This boy has a natural gift. He should become a hero. Please, allow us to support your family while we help him reach his potential.
A secret investigation into the League. If getting my hands dirty will help everyone else rest easy, then I gladly take on the task.
Damn. I really take
My
one for the
name is
team.
Fox. I want to live in a world where heroes have too much time on their hands. And I'll make sure that happens.
Man. I'm really liking Hawks. I'm really liking him.
I bet you're super excited to celebrate your big victory over that monster, huh, Dad?
It's a bad scar. Looks painful.
Similar show though, you know? Like now he has a scar over his eye and everything. It's so like, that has to be on purpose.
You promised you'd be in good mood. At least pretend that you don't hate him.
I'm standing right here.
Sorry, sis, but I'm out. I can't do this.
If you have something to say, then talk.
Oh, give me a break. I found out today that Shoto likes soba. I know nothing about my brother because you didn't want him to have anything to do with us failures.
Didn't grow up with his
Ignore them,
siblings.
To me, you're still the maniac bastard who ruined our family. You look like you're different, but you don't act that way. Mom screams. Shoto's crying. What happened to our big brother, Toya? You may have had a change of heart, but you can't waltz in here and think
Toya.
we'll accept you.
Let it out there.
I plan to be your father now and atone for what I did.
It's too late!
Well, that went terribly.
That was heavy.
Shoto started visiting Mom on a regular basis, and Dad is compromising and making an effort. I thought maybe we could act like a real family for once, you know?
We can get there.
I
It's
was
just
just
gonna take
looking
time.
forward to it so much, weren't you?
That was the first time I've ever seen Natsu show that much emotion.
I can't believe he didn't arrest anyone from the League. I thought we already caught a ton of those Nomu things. Why was he having such a hard time with one?
Fuck's sake.
Look at him! I used to be a huge fan of it, but Endeavor's totally my top hero after that.
Can't forget
Nice.
Look Boy's passion.
Who's Look Boy? Some new hero?
The child now known by the nickname Look Boy struck a chord with many during the fight.
He's got his own fans now.
A change is coming. I can feel it.
Endeavor, the top hero, was amazing. But that's not who's standing here. I have to agree with what Natsu said. I still can't forgive you for what you did to Mom. As for being my father, I'll have to watch your actions to see if you earn that.
Well,
I
open
didn't
up.
become #1 the way I wanted to. So my hero work is tainted with shame.
I'm sure you have a reason if you look inside yourself.
Oh, you'll find it.
Said that, what suddenly came to mind was one resounding thought. I must guarantee their future. Then I've failed with my own family. How can I demand forgiveness after so long? I'm sorry for everything. And I should have handled that conversation with Natsuo differently. I'll try to make amends. It's my only path forward.
After basic physical training, I worked on One for All until I was exhausted. and passed out on top of my sheets.
Fuck. Oh, we're getting more of this. Yes.
I had a dream. Wait, there. I'd had a vision like this before.
Yeah.
But this dream was much clearer than that.
Much more vivid, I think. Yeah.
They were the vestiges of One for All. There are 2 more I can't make out. So the successors of One for All. Every inheritor. 7 people. 8 including me, except its original wielder.
Stand at my side. Dear foolish little brother.
Because what you're doing is wrong! I refuse to stand by and watch as you corrupt everything around us! The first...
What a callous thing to say. I'm trying to compromise with you.
The world is falling apart right now. It's an utter chaos. But meta power shouldn't be used to further self-interest. Am I seeing the past reenacted?
This man's jaw was transformed. Those wretched fangs simply won't stop growing. He's a kind-hearted man, but he was persecuted, called sick and a monster. This man has no abilities. On his way home from work one evening, he was attacked by a gang of metas.
They call them metas.
Still turning back!
Yeah, he's frail, isn't he? He's doing this under the pretense that he's doing something good for these kind of people, but there's obviously more of a selfish
if I'm ever
thing
in
going on, right?
Can go home, thank you. I'll help too. I'm forever in your debt after this gift.
I saw 2 people in need and helped both of them using my ability.
I'm no fool. You don't care about them. You're just adding lackeys to your collection.
Why do you ignore the joy my power brings them? The concept of humanity is broken in this world. I can use my power to restore a sense of order.
Do you even remember how many innocents you've toyed with before you abandoned them?
Poor thing. Born without any meta abilities. Without power, you can't hope to achieve anything. But I still love you. I hope you know that. I will give you everything you want if you agree to join me. Choice to those without power. Mercy to those who have sinned.
He forces them under like control though, and like to submit and everything by giving them power, right?
Again.
So
you're disintegrating into nothing.
I refuse to become the man you want me to be.
They let their powers go to waste, formed factions, rose against me. But it wasn't by my hand that they lost their lives. My multitude of adoring friends took it upon themselves to spite the wicked and act on my behalf. Fantasy come to life. It's like the world from the comic we read together back when we were young.
Except you gave up and only read through Volume 3. The Demon King ruled that fictional land.
What?
But a hero of justice struggled against him to save the world.
Guy looks like Gran Torino.
The villain always loses in the end.
Dreams have become reality. And reality doesn't follow stock plots. I'll rewrite your story as well.
This is where he's gone too far.
Let me go!
I've found a meta power for you. Will join me.
Please, brother!
Wake up from the dream
You're the
then.
ninth wielder, right?
Oh, fuck!
I'm sorry. I wanted to show you more, but you're barely using 20% of the power yet.
He's talking to him!
We're long past the singularity point. Don't be afraid. You are not alone.
Oh, that's cool. Okay, episode 2. Yes, a lot of interesting things to talk about here, and I'm going to go in depth into something that I kind of just want to talk about in regards to One for All, right? Because we'll start off with that because I think it's the most sort of like meaty part, and we're starting to now kind of it seems like we're at the beginning of starting to get like all of these little tidbits from from One for All and all of its previous holders beforehand, and over the course of time, this is going to serve as something that like gives us that insight with All for One's younger brother allowing like and giving Deku like all of these these parts of history. So we it's a great storytelling device, I feel like, and how everything started and how it came to be and everything. But the interesting thing about it, and I don't know whether it's more of a, funny enough, a meta sense, right? We'll get onto that in a bit. But I don't know if the fact of 2 of them, the first 2, of what I assume is the first two One for All holders. You can't make them out. They are essentially, if you see what Deku is, where like everything's covered up except for the top half of his head and his hand. The rest of it has got that like sort of, I mean, Deku's color is that sort of like very green, like, tealy green, kind of bluish color. That lines the outside, and then on the inside it's like a void, kind of. That's the best way I can describe it. And the first two have that completely, which is interesting. And I don't know if it's just to serve a storytelling purpose of, oh, it's going to be a surprise who they are. I mean, I don't know who we could possibly be surprised by in any, unless it's something that the mangaka doesn't know who they are yet, and he hasn't written enough like ahead to the point where we are learning about those two. So it could easily be that. But I want to get into some like meaty theory stuff because I like doing that. It's interesting to me that Deku, basically has this whole thing of he can only use up to 20%, really. Alright, anything more than that tends to break his body, at this point anyway. And therefore that is kind of visually shown when he's in that that sort of dream state where all of the previous One for All holders are, that you can probably see, barely 20% of his entire body, or something along those lines. I mean, the fact that it's just the top of his head and a hand, it seems like if it was 20% it'd be a bit more than that. But I think that's generally the idea of what is going on there, that he's using 20% of his power, therefore that's how much he can form in that space. Whereas the first two, like I talked about before, are completely covered. And I don't know if it's a case of because they were the first two that they never actually kind of got to the point where they could learn their quirk, their power, to a degree of being that kind of One for All holder, like actually stepping up to the plate. I don't know if it's a case of just they never reached any kind of potential that the people afterwards ended up doing, and that it would make sense with those two being the first two, because this is the thing as well, is the way that they are lined up. I would have to assume, and this is the thing that is interesting to me, is that All Might isn't there in that space, but the one closest to Deku is All Might's like previous master and teacher, if you will. I mean, it's not teacher because that's Gran Torino, but his former mentor is the closest to Deku, and then it goes down the line of other people that we haven't seen before. So I assume that in that order, that is the order of One for All passed from one to the next. So it would make sense that the first two not actually being able to, because I mean, we don't know, this idea that the powers pass through, right? We don't know what the because All for One's little brother had the stockpiling power, and then add, give power, and pass it on to other people. Having those two together, what did the first One for All holder have? We don't know that, so we don't know if it was a power that would actually work in a sense of like to do hero work, because some things are more suited to proper hero work than other kind of stuff. There's different rules for different things, and we don't know. He could have had a weak one, but it's just a question of who All for One's younger brother decided to pass it on to. I mean, I feel like because he is, he's all about, doing the right thing, and he's very just, that I feel like he wouldn't have just give it to anyone unless he was almost forced to by, like, he didn't have enough time and he has to just pass it on to somebody, that he would find somebody suitable for it. So it could have been something similar to, I mean, he could have, those first two people could have been quirkless for all we know, and then therefore there was nothing to pass on other than, it's basically just passing the same sort of, think of it as like passing the parcel, and you just, you know what I mean, you pass the same thing through and nothing gets added. So And then the third one along, the yellow one, is very interesting. He's the one that like stands out the most, and I think that has to do with the fact of like he's this bright yellow. He's he obviously stands out in terms of the other more dimmer colours. But he is just this like flash, this proper bright light, and because of that, you can barely make out him as well. But it's completely the opposite of like the lack of like anything with like it's not like this he's not the same as the first two where there is a void and an aura of colour, but he's just like full on bright. So I wonder if it could be a case of that one. Like he's the most interesting one visually for me, and I'm interested whenever we get because I'm assuming we're going to get little tidbits here and there, information about the previous One for All Hulas as we go through the show. I can't wait to get to that one because he seems like a very interesting one, very intriguing to me. And I don't know if it's a case of he's the first one that actually brought added something to the power that enhanced it immeasurably. So yeah, he's an interesting one for me. But yeah, because he's so bright, he can barely make him out. I did talk about just earlier on there that All Might doesn't appear in here, but that yellow one is the one that appears most like him, because I mean we kind of associate like All Might, and I guess that yellow colour that I guess ties in with his hair. He doesn't have the All Might hair as like when he's full All Might, but he does have that similar hair that when he's not in his full the what his hair used to be like. It's more kind of like that, but I don't think that is All Might, because then there would, I don't know why he would be situated there if it does go through in order of people who held One for All. All Might obviously would not be third in line, so there is that, unless there was a power that I don't know brought him back around, time travel shit. I mean that would just be the kind of the next thing, that once the story gets so far into it, something time travel-y happens. But I don't think that is the case. But an interesting thing is that Deku says that and I did count them through, that there are 8 people there, including Deku. And the quote that he says is, the previous One for All Hulas, 8 including me, except for the original, which is All for One's brother. And then we cut over to see All for One and the younger brother. But then that would mean that that's 9 altogether. But we know that All Might was in that. He was in there. But he's not appearing here. So that would have to you would have to assume then that you would have to assume that All for One's younger brother doesn't make up one of the 9, right? He wouldn't be classed as number 1. He's kind of like the 0, if you will, because that's the thing. Is if it was just the way that Deku said it, and that he was like 8 previous Hulas, including me, except for the original, and then it turns to him. So I don't think All for One's younger brother counts as one of the 9. He's more like a 0, if you will. So yeah, patient 0, we'll call him that. So yeah, I mean it's either that or those two, the first 2 that are voided out that you can't really see, unless one of them is All Might. But none of them, I don't really associate their colours with All Might, which a lot of them seem like, I mean we don't know really anything about them other than All Might's mentor, which she was more of a purpley thing, and you can see that she's kind of covered in that colour there. But another thing I wanted to do, just for the sake of it, because here's the thing, if you go in order, right, there's red, purple, yellow, purple again, blue, red, and then purple. So there's a lot of purple going on in this thing. But there's one thing that is interesting to me, because I just wanted to see this, for something, for shits and giggles, right? Just to see what is good. So this is the first time All Might explains One for All, and I know that we've seen this further on in the series. This is episode 2 or whatever, right? the thing that's interesting to me is that the colours don't line up, and I just wanted to say this just because when we go through this, this scene right here, the one, right, where it goes through almost like this kind of like, this like kind of, from one start to the next kind of thing, it's very much like a spacey kind of thing, but none of the colours actually line up to what we actually see there. So, and I know that I'm just digging, like, going into depth in something that could be considered completely stupid, but I just thought it would be fun. But I thought of it as this, right? So this right here is the OG, right? So this would be All For One's brother, right? He's like just this kind of white light. I guess it suits his hair, right? It immediately goes to blue. Now we know that it's the first one isn't blue, it's red. Okay, so there is that. I can't remember if red appears later in this little thing here, but first of all it goes to blue, and there's red right there. So that's interesting to me that it goes from a sort of like a singularity, I guess, if you want, which I thought was All For One's brother. It went to blue and then it goes to red. But here's the interesting part that is interesting to me, is that we go from red to green. Now there is no green in there. There is no green. There's no one with green. Then it goes to orange, or like a yellow, like a bright spark, kind of, a big one. And then purple, pink, yellow, which, at this point, when you're going through the colours, you're like, alright, well, that last one there, that's All Might, right? Because that's what, yellow is kind of his colour, I feel like. So, yeah, I just thought that would be interesting just to try and sort of make out, like, something from there. In regards to, like, the colours and everything like that, because, I mean, with anime, it generally comes down to, like, colours are a big thing in anime, especially, like, when it comes to the colours of his hair and things like that. It generally lines up with their ability, or if it's not their hair colour, it's the colour of their aura or the power that they give off. And I just thought that would be interesting just to line up, just to see if there was anything, if that was something that was planned in advance or anything like that. And it doesn't seem to, because there is definitely no green. I mean, you can see right here, there is no green. It's red, purple, yellow, purple, blue, red, and then purple again, with All Might's mentor, and then Deku, which is, I mean, he's a kind of a green one, but he wouldn't be in that previous one, because he was, during that scene, Deku hadn't been given the power yet. So, yeah, I don't know. It's an intriguing one. I don't know why there's so many purple. I don't know. I don't know why I'm going so in depth into colours. But like as I say, it's just, I'm trying to find like little, maybe hints or clues or something like that into who the people are or in what order they are. But they've got them lined up here, so I have to assume that it does go in order of the one for all holders. So yeah, but it's going to be really cool to see, like, about these people. I'm really interested in the little blue guy as well, because he seems a bit, you know what I mean? He seems a bit more like, almost more, I guess, cool, calm, kind of collected. Whereas, like, people like All Might, they're very, I guess, like, more like in your face and bright in some sort of sense. But having, somebody like him who seems a bit more maybe involved with strategy and everything like that, as opposed to like just full on head on, would be interesting. So yeah, I don't know, man. It's interesting though that those first two are completely blotted out, and again it could be either or. It could be the fact that they just didn't have the the potential to take One for All to that level, so they don't actually appear that much, or it could just be the fact that at this point it's kind of more of a surprise later on of who they are, and we'll get more information on that later on. But yeah, right, so what else we got? Yeah, I guess we'll continue on with the dream anyway. So it's interesting that All For One, he goes on about, like, this, I mean, he's always kind of played the villain role kind of expertly, if you want to kind of call it that, I guess. But I'm beginning to suspect that like he's the one that's lost touch with reality, you know. I mean, that was even, you know, this isn't something that he's just talking about now, like right here, that we've been introduced to. But even in the All Might fight, he says, let's he said, what was the quote? Like, let's stop dwelling on something and start focusing on reality. But I think that the idea that I'm starting to kind of picture in my head is like, I feel like he's the one that's lost touch with reality, and he's almost bringing this comic that he read with his younger brother to life, almost, you know. And I don't know the circumstances of around his family, because he did say that, you know, he does love his younger brother. And the first time he said that, I did trust what he was saying. I did believe him. The second time, when that's when he, you know, actually gives him a power to make him submit. I don't know. I mean, I feel like he thinks he believes it at that point, but it just feels like I mean, that's the point where he's gone, like, you know, the point of no return. But almost like the fact that he brought up this comic book, and if you think about it from like you know, when he was talking about it, it sounded very like cheesy. That, you know, the younger brother would be like, oh, it's only because you read up to volume 3. And he purposefully stopped, and, you know, All for One purposefully stopped there. I think there was a reason for that. In my head, I'm thinking that there could be, well, I guess multiple things. Like, one of his quotes is, it's like a fantasy come to life, right? A quote like that almost makes me think that he wants to play the villain role in real life. Like, bring some sort of, like, these comic book fantasies to life. And he's sort of, I guess, vindicted in the idea that he wants to be, like, play the villain role. But another quote kind of throws that on its head and has a different twist to it. So he also says, reality doesn't follow stock plots. So there's an interesting thing with that, which I almost feel like, what if he knew what the end was going to be? You know what I mean? I wonder if he's read a comic book, right, like this with his younger brother. It's probably safe to say that he's you know, looked at other comics and heroes and everything like that, and he could be like just sick of the idea that the good guy always wins and the bad, you know what I mean? And maybe he thinks of it as too simple, and that, you know, there's nothing real about it. You know what I mean? There's nothing in reality that fact doesn't exist, and maybe he's out to prove that to society or whatever. But like this idea that maybe because he stopped at volume 3 at the point where the villain was at the highest point of his power, and purposefully stopped there, knowing that if he was to continue, that you know, the hero would come in and defeat him. And maybe it's a case of like he purposely stopped there because he wants to live out that whole thing and probably change the ending in real life, and prove to society that it's not the good guy that always wins at the end, or that he wants to, you know, write a new ending for it, kind of, you know, something that's more akin to reality, whilst at the same time bringing out this sort of fantastical, you know, almost like a comic book world, and put it in real life. That he just wants to play this villain, and that's his, you know, it's his kind of like sole purpose. You know what I mean? Because you find that, like, you know, and he's given this kind of, you know, he's obviously given all of this spiel to Shigaraki and everything, because Shigaraki says it as well, and about it being like, you know, very hypocritical on both sides, the way that society is, especially like in this world. And of course, you know, All for One uses the ridiculed and the downtrodden as almost like his that he's vindictive in what he's doing, that, you know, but he's taking advantage of these people. Of course, you know what I mean, it does prove that in the real world, people are very judgmental of others. It's unfortunate for that guy who, you know, was born with this what you would almost call like, you know, disfigurement, who's actually a really nice guy, but people look at him and they judge him based on how he looks, and that, you know, that was back then. I mean, because obviously with this being like that kind of that space where All For One's brother is showing Deku what happened back then. This was like pretty far back. But even now, in current time, in current MHA time, there's still people like, you know, they're still putting out polls about heroes who look the most like villains and everything like that. And there's still that sort of perception. And I like how that ties in with what, you know, we're coming around and getting these little bits of information that actually tie in a lot with what is happening currently with Endeavor and everything. That even though he went out and saved everyone from that Nomu, did a fucking amazing job, there's still people on there going like, well, why was it so hard for, and everything like that, and just shitting all over it. But that is true, and that is akin to kind of reality, like especially nowadays, like people are always just finding the worst in something, or the negative, to spout about that, rather than seeing it for what it was, which was Endeavor came out and saved them. You know, so it's yeah, it's crazy. And yeah, so they go on about and talk about it as meta. So their powers were referred to as meta back then, which is very interesting. And it's one of those, I guess, things that I wasn't even considering that back then they referred to it differently. But I totally imagine this to be the case. The reason why they don't use meta anymore and they've changed it to Quirk is because Quirk sounds a hell of a lot more like friendly. I remember like it probably would have been episode 1 where Deku's obviously given you the rundown and the exposition of what this world is, and that, you know, 80% of people possess quirks. That you know, that he says something, and you know, he's quoted as saying, as you know, society tries to go ahead with, you know, with quirks in mind and everything, because it's a tough job to do, right? I mean, you can't account for everyone, and everyone, you know, a lot of people like various different quirks and everything, but yeah, like I feel as though there is still some, like, I guess, disdain for some people with certain quirks. I mean, even, you know, another thing that's going to be coming up in this season is what's his name? Fucking general studies guy, Shinto. Is that was it? I think it was. I'm pretty sure I wrote it down, didn't I? I don't even know. Actually, maybe I didn't. I don't think I did. But yeah, Shinto, like, he the same thing. You know what I mean? Growing up, he was, you know, people were looking at him saying that, oh my god, he's going to become a villain because of the quirk that he has and stuff. So I like how all of this is coming around at the same time. And all of it makes sense, that even, you know, way back then in time, the same thing's still happening now. You know. So yeah, I feel like it's not without the realm of possibility that they changed the you know, meta to Quirk, because Quirk sort of, you know, it sounds friendlier, and in the hopes that people see it as more of a, you know, not someone who's different, kind of, you know. So yeah, very interesting. Oh, what else? Yeah, so it is interesting that, like, you know, when Deku is sort of, I don't know, like conscious, semi-conscious, that, or even, I guess, fully conscious, that All For One's younger brother can kind of affect things. Almost force his quirk at some point, because we have to assume that he was the actual one that forced the quirk to activate when he was against Shinto the first time. You know, when Shinto took control of him and he was about to send him out of bounds, and he saw them for the first time, you know. and that like forced his the activation of his quirk. So I have to assume that that's what happened, which is interesting because we know that All For One also has a force activation quirk, doesn't he? which I just find is interesting, like that that his All For One's younger brother is able to do that, from within Deku. I don't know like to what degree of like influence he has like in there, but for some reason like he does hold like almost like his life has gone on with this power, almost like which is interesting. I mean, All For One's been around for so long, that de-aging quirks and everything like that they thought of as theories, that to some degree the younger brother is also still like surviving. To some degree, because I don't see this this whole thing of this like sort of dream space or this one for all space. I don't see it as like it's all in Deku's mind and he was in control of it the whole time. I almost feel like to a degree like the younger brother is actually in there. You know what I mean? I mean, I don't think it's as like. Don't get me wrong. I don't think it's as something as silly as I think it's more about the memory that is passed down from the power, because the idea of passing on powers is something that is extremely rare, and only case it comes down from, it all stems from All For One. So like it's something that no one else has to our knowledge at this point anyway. But yeah, I mean, I think it's more like kind of in the sort of, it's more of a memory kind of thing, and as Deku becomes more proficient with the quirk, the more memories open up to a degree, right? But the way that it's being visualized, almost like the younger brother's taken him on this journey, it's almost like it's more like that than it actually being the younger brother in there speaking to him as like almost like a conversation, a separate entity. I feel like it's more just memories that as Deku becomes more proficient, it opens up. So yeah. And then he says something about be careful because we're long past the singularity point. I don't know what that means. I don't know what it means, but that's obviously an interesting, I guess, description of something that the younger brother knows about. Obviously, it's obviously to do with One For All, but to preface that with be careful, as opposed to like don't worry. You know what I mean? Be careful. I don't know if it's just the case of because the amount of people that it's been passed through, it gets stronger and stronger. Like maybe it's just a case of like each time it gets passed down to somebody new, it gets harder and harder to maybe contain it, and it needs to be, more steadily kind of, trained. And I guess because of the way Deku is, he's wanting, the amount of times he goes over the threshold of what he should be doing with these powers is ridiculous. It happens all the time. And the thing is, Deku he needs to be careful with some of that. Past the singularity point, I don't know. I mean, a singularity point is almost like the fucking, like the. I mean, what would be the best way to describe it? Like almost like right down to like the nucleus of like, like the most concentrated, of the power is right here. To have gone past it. I don't know. Could it mean that like because he's long past the singularity point, like I don't know, because to go past the singularity point, I guess it depends on which. If you're talking about directional, which way does it mean? But like, but to go past it, to go even further? But that would completely. I mean, that would just go against physics, right? In mathematics, a singularity is in general a point at which given mathematical object is not defined, or a point where a mathematical object ceases to be well behaved in some particular way. Interesting. It's an interesting phrase, well behaved. if he's long past that, that means that they're in kind of, I guess, unforeseen territory. So I guess I could be right then with the idea of, like, because it's been, you know, passed down so long, all of these people given power to it, transferring it on, that we're in kind of unforeseen territory here where, like, we don't know what's going to happen with the amount of power that you have, right? There could be something like that. I mean, the singularity, yeah, is x equals 0. So it's literally at the point where, like, it's almost like the singularity is almost nothing. It says here, since it is not differentiable, you know, it's not almost like a physical point, you know. It's not something that's physically there. It's just the point of which, like, you know, I guess if you get to a certain, like, you know, you compact everything to a certain point, like, I mean, isn't a singularity is what the cause of black holes are and everything, that you know, like stars and everything, like that, you know, collapse to and you know, they basically almost like compress and implode and get to a point where, like, you know, there's so much mass in the singularity, like at the singularity, that, you know, like it just, I'm sure it's something like that, you know. So I guess, I mean, to some degree, if he's well past that, it's kind of, it's at a point where, I don't know, One for All might go a bit mad. It might activate, for all we know, it might fucking activate when Deku doesn't want it to activate. I mean, you know, the idea that he comes out of you know, the dream and smashes a window because the One for All power, like, it's acting a bit erratically, maybe. So maybe that is what we're talking about here when it's like, you know, he's past the singularity point, and that's why the younger brother's telling him to be careful about it. So yeah, interesting. I guess that's that. At the very beginning of the episode, yeah, we have Dabi, who actually did, you know, want to. It seems as though he really wants to take out Endeavor himself. And you know, I'm just at this point now where I just feel like he is a Todoroki. And it's interesting, we actually got the name of the third sibling that Natsuo was saying with his argument with Endeavor, which, really good performance, really good. Like, you know, that was well voice acted. That I felt like that you could actually sense, like, that he you know, the sort of just disdain of everything that he's done, and the one who truly can't, you know, forgive him, even more so than Shoto, which is interesting. But he called the third sibling Toya, so yeah. Not that I can get anything from that with, you know, Toya, Dabi, it's not the same at all. But yeah, so that's the name of the third sibling, who I assume is Dabi. I mean, you know, even if we, you know, hypothetically at this point we didn't have any idea that Dabi could possibly be a Todoroki, you can see why someone would form the theory that he must be, from the way Dabi was acting with Endeavor at the beginning of this episode. You know, when his face went mental when he was like, you know, you better not be killed off or die. Almost like Dabi wants to be the one to do it. You know, he wants to get back at his father for what he's done. And you know, you see that, like, you know, Natsuo is completely at odds with what he did. He hates him as well. Dabi went down a different route, and however he got there, we don't know. I'm sure that, you know, in flashbacks we'll learn, like, how he started off. I mean, there was a little bit of, not relatability, but something that you could possibly see in the future as something to sympathize with Dabi, maybe, that you know, he was you know, when he thought back about what Endeavor said about Snatch and everything, he was like, oh yeah, that dude, I remember now. And what Snatch had said was, you know, how do you feel about, you know, all of the, you know, the family members of the people that you killed, and he kind of has this own thought in his head about, you know, yeah, I mean, it's making me, you know, go insane. It's you know, he's insane at this point, right? So I want to know how he got to that point. Like, what was his almost first kill, and how did that come about? Because, you know, it could be a situation where he was kind of conned into doing so, possibly, and that began the thing. There could be a case of like something similar that All for One does, where you know, he manipulates people and doing his bidding. So there can also be that. But I mean, I don't know. I mean, I'm more obviously inclined to believe that just because of the sheer, like, you know, the kind of like the stress and I guess the trauma that Endeavor put his kids through, that maybe Dabi would have just caved from that, and that's what forced him into it. That he was so fucking angry that he didn't see what he was doing to other people, you know, in, you know, the hopes that he was just lashing out at people who, you know, maybe strangers or anything, because of what his father put him through. He ended up killing someone, and then that just devolved from there. But you know, like, I wouldn't be surprised, because remember, like, this the thing, like, with Shoto was the one for Endeavor. He was the one where he was, you know, the perfect mix, right? That could combat the fire equally, so that he didn't have to worry about overheating and everything like that. We know that Dabi is pretty much full fire, at least to this point anyway. We don't know if he has any secret abilities, but, like, you know, like, he was full fire. So I don't know. I mean, it could be a case of, because the way Endeavor was acting with his kids, that, like, maybe he actually, Dabi became the biggest outcast from Endeavor's mind, because he has the blue fire, right? And we know that blue fire burns hotter, right? So it could be a thing of when Endeavor, the reason why he, you know, the whole reasoning of everything, wanting to have his kids not have to worry about overheating and having something to combat that, you know, what ended up happening is Toya was born. He ends up with blue fire, which is completely the opposite of, like, that's going even further away from what Endeavor wanted. So it's possible that he could have become the outcast, and Endeavor might have hated him, and then that caused him to, you know, become Dabi and everything like that. And he actually bled from one of his patches as well when he was thinking about it, which is interesting, because I always thought, like, I remember when he first turned up in, like, season 2, and you know, we saw the patches and I was like, fucking hell, that's brutal kind of thing, you know. But I didn't know to what degree they were actually fucking, you know, patched up and you know, like. But it seems as though it's like wearing a mask that's like dead skin, that, you know, you've like under there it's just literally just flesh and like bone. But I wonder what caused him to do that. If he was going insane, that he self-harmed himself, or if, like, the blue fire was too much for him and he ended up injuring himself. I don't know, but it's going to be interesting to get, like, you know, that more of the story with that. Speaking of, like, you know, injuries and everything like that, Endeavor's new scar, I think it's very obvious almost that the comparison with Shoto's scar, you know, that there's, you know, there's something there, that, you know, the whole thing with Shoto and you know, the Todorokis as a whole started with Shoto, and him telling that story, or, like, you know, remembering back to when he, you know, the boiling water was poured over his head. That was almost like the start of the whole Todoroki saga in a way, and that at the beginning of almost Endeavor's redemption and his hope for forgiveness, he also gets a scar there. It's like just like the start of you know, of something new. So I think the symbolism is definitely there, and I really like that. So that's really cool. Yeah, Dabi said Uchiko before teleporting out of there. We know we've saw that kind of thing before. That's how, you know, at Camino Ward, that whole, you know, before that whole fight starts, they managed to take Dabi, who else? Bakugo as well. They all got out of there with that sort of teleportation thing. And it's interesting that he calls it Uchiko, which, I mean, that seems like a name to me, but I don't recall I don't recall anyone in the League of Villains being called Uchiko, and it also sounds like a female name as well. So, is there someone that we haven't met yet? I wonder. What's interesting as well is that like that whoever Uchiko is didn't have to be there to activate it, which is just it's interesting, and also it appears like out of nowhere. Is it possible that there could be some kind of quirk that is literally like not even a person? That it's like almost like a. I mean, I don't even know, because I'm just thinking like, how does it come out of nowhere? How does it hear what Dabi's saying? I don't know. It could be a thing like I don't know, like maybe like well, no, it'll not be like it'll not be like an edible, will it? Or like something that is there, because Bakugo would have realised that, and he never did, and he was awake during the whole thing, so I'm pretty sure he wouldn't have, you know, if Shigaraki was like, yeah, keep this on your tongue, you know what I mean? It wouldn't be anything like that. So yeah, interesting. I wonder if whatever Uchiko is some kind of like quirk that isn't even a person, like, you know, it's something else. I don't know. It will be interesting though. Yeah, so I wrote down Hawks is in true collusion, but then it was revealed that no, it's just that Hawks is being given this job to infiltrate the League of Villains, and that for that he needs to get on their side, which it immediately puts Hawks in this situation of like a fucking like almost being tragic, because he's going to be doing things for the, you know, the betterment, the greater good, but he's going to have to basically put himself in bad situations and in bad press as well. But that's what makes him the perfect candidate, because he doesn't care about the fame. He's not that kind of hero. So he's a completely different like style of hero that is really going to be taking one for the team. So yeah, I like Hawks a lot, man. I really do. So yeah, I mean, but they obviously they wanted the fight to take place away from the public, but Dabi forced them into that. So that is why Hawks, you know, that whole thing about me talking about why would Hawks, like, if he was truly like in collusion about wanting to help Endeavor for some reason, why would he set it in a public place where people could die? You know, because you can't save everyone, kind of thing. But that explains it, is that he didn't know it was going to happen there. So yeah. Yeah, and they were talking about like Look Boy as well, which is the guy who, like, shouted out like the news and that, look over there, he's fighting for us, kind of thing. I like how he's got fans now, because he showed up and he was like, you know, that's just like, yeah, really really funny. So yeah, I mean, that's pretty much it. That's what I've got. I didn't expect Mirko to turn up. I didn't know what the hell was going to go down there at the beginning, but I did not expect Mirko to turn up, so that was really cool. And obviously getting a look at some of the top heroes that we haven't seen before, so that's really cool. But yeah, that's all I've got. So I hope I got everything. I hope you enjoyed some of the crazy theories and shit like that was going on about. But yeah, that's all I've got. So thank you everyone for watching. In the description below, I have links to certain things. One of them is the Discord, so you can get yourself over there if you wish. And I also have a Patreon page as well. So if you do want to support me on Patreon, that'd be very much appreciated. There is a bunch of different tiers and rewards there, like early access gives you access to shows a week early. There's the full-length tier, which gives you access to full-length reactions like this episode. Links in the description for that. And there's the exclusive tier, which gives you access to full-length movie reactions and everything like that. I'm doing the Fate Heaven's Feel movies. I've just recently done the second one. Third one will be out soon. I'm wanting to get it out before the end of this month. Okay, so it shouldn't be that long. So if you are looking forward to that, then do look forward to it. It shouldn't be long. But anyway, yeah, that's all I've got. Thank you for watching. I'll see you all next time. Bye bye.